Dr. Terrance J. McClain is a higher education professional who is driven by the success of his students. As a first-generation college student, he attended Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, where he earned his bachelor's degree in marketing. He then transitioned to Texas State University, San Marcos, where he earned his master's degree in student affairs and higher education. Before graduating, he became an academic advisor with PACE Academic Advising. It was during this time that Dr. McClain pursued his passion for working with minority populations, and specifically African American males, and the effectiveness of academic advising in their student success and retention. He has conducted over 20 presentations at TEXAAN, Texas Academic Advising Network, and NACADA, and won the Best of Region 7 on advising African American males. Since then, Dr. McClain has published in NACADA's Academic Advising Today on advising African American males. Dr. McClain also graduated from Texas State University with his PhD in adult education, where his research titled Advising African American Males from the Advisor's Viewpoint. He has since spoken at various institutions on this topic, been hosted on podcasts, and is writing for publication with his research. In his spare time, he loves to cook, make peach cobbler, and serve the Lord in all that he does. Dr. McClain served as the president, past president, and co-chair for 2 annual conferences for TEXAAN. He has also served as Texas State Liaison for NACADA Region 7. Dr. McClain is grateful for his experiences, but is most grateful for his wife, who constantly supports and encourages him in all that he does. I think this is going to be a fun and informative interview. Thank you so much for joining us. And what's the weather like right now? Because last time we spoke, the weather was pretty crazy in Texas.
Yes, well, the weather is continuing to be, its normal self. And right now, I guess it's, fulfilling, it's what we call April showers, Mayflowers. Right now, the weather is, I came in yesterday, it was warm. I went out for lunch, it was cold. I came out again this morning. It was kind of warm. So, so I don't know what's going on. And it's kind of raining. So whatever.
I'm guessing that the warmth would probably be a little bit different to how warm it gets here in Dublin. And having been to San Marcos once upon a time myself, it's a beautiful part of the world, but very different to Dublin. But we are delighted to get the opportunity to chat to you today. And Matt covered in your bio, you have quite the repertoire, and we will cover a lot of that in this. But we always like to get to know our guests a little bit and give listeners the opportunity to get to know you. So can you talk to us a little bit, Terrance, about how you came to work in higher ed?
Yes. This is great to, know about a person and kind of their journey. And for me, I think being at Texas A&M and being on a campus that supported students being extremely involved, I would say most of the students on the campus are overachievers. And so for myself, as I got into college, my freshman year at Fish Camp, which is our freshman orientation, they promoted get involved because it's an opportunity for you to really get to know people and things like that. But little did I know that involvement would spark my passion to be in higher education and work with students. And I was like, I'm ready to go get through the end of my career journey, my academic journey. I felt like I don't want to leave. I'm not ready to graduate college and go and be a real adult. And thankfully, because of my involvement, I was able to interact with other people that worked in higher ed. And they said, I think this will be a good fit for you. So while I was doing my study abroad in Germany, I applied to go to my master's program here at Texas State. And so that's just kind of a little bit of my journey. I got involved in everything. I ran for class president. If you don't know anything about A&M, I ran for Yell leader. I also was in everything from like a gospel choir to a hip hop dance team. Whatever I could do, I still did not do everything that I wanted to do. But whatever I could do, that's where I wanted to be in. So I think those opportunities really gave me the passion that I needed to work in higher ed, because obviously I didn't grow up thinking I want to work in college for the rest of my life. It wasn't until I got in the space that I found that passion.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where when we ask that question about like your background, how you got to where you're at, yeah, that's kind of like the same answer is like, we never thought like, yeah, I wanted to be in advising or I wanted to, be in higher ed. We always wanted to do something else, but our path kind of led us this way, and everyone kind of has their different journey. Now, you're currently right now at Texas State University, correct?
Yes.
So can you talk about your current role and what that entails?
Yes. I actually, next year, I will be at Texas State for 10 years, a whole decade, which is a lot for a millennial. But anyway, my role at Texas State, I'm actually in academic coaching. So I started off at academic coaching, and I transitioned to academic advising, and then now I'm back in academic coaching. And so at our institution, we have those two things separate. And I work with students on time management, study skills, note taking, but I also work with upperclassmen, really with trying to figure out what their next step is going to be. And so I kind of coach them, walk them through step by step of what it is to figure out their next step in their next journey. So I'll try to do my best to match those career aspirations with their academic goals, and then make sure that they're, successful in the way that they need to be, and just be that extra support. But I also do something else that's very interesting, that we had a grant that worked on financial education. And so since then, we have kind of embedded this financial education with coaching. And so I work with students also to help them with budget, knowing more about student loans and how to reduce debt, and then credit as well. So it's been an interesting journey. I do a lot of event planning on my campus. So we have large success with people coming out to our events. We work with credit unions across the area, and we give out scholarships and things like that. So it's been a really cool journey, and people wanted to stay. So we're continuing to do financial education on our campus.
Yeah, really interesting work that you're engaged in. I want to delve a little bit back into your education, because I was reading and it was interesting, and you mentioned it, your study abroad experience in Germany. I'd like to, if you could talk to us a little bit more about, that's what studying abroad was like, but also the your Master of Education in Student Affairs in Higher Education. Suppose that's not something that's available in Ireland or really in the UK. It's beginning to emerge here. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that and what exactly you studied?
Yes. So my educational experience in Germany was fantastic. I had a lot of wonderful, really funny experiences, but at the time they were very traumatic. At the moment, I remember wanted to go study abroad. And when I got to be my junior year, because I was so involved, I didn't really make the space to go and study abroad like I wanted to, because I was always doing orientation in the summer and taking summer school and doing fish camp and things like that. So I decided this is my last opportunity to go, and I decided to go for a whole semester. But what I didn't realize was that I was going by myself. I thought I was going with a group of people. I don't know. I didn't read all the way into it. And so, but I wanted to go. And also, this was one of the areas where you didn't need to speak German. So I didn't speak German either. And so I was like, great, I'm going to go. But I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't think about outside of the school, I probably need to speak German. So I went there and I got off the plane, and then, all I hear is German, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying. So I get there, and I'm supposed to be getting picked up by someone. That person never showed up. We never found each other. So I had to get a taxi to where I was going. And I was in a small winery village, very, very far away, about an hour and a half away from Frankfurt. So I get there and, I don't know how to speak German. So I'm just like, pointing at things like, hey, can you help me here? So I get there and I realize, okay, I'm in the spot in the location where I'm supposed to be staying, but I don't have the keys. So I get there and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I sit outside on the curb. And I'm like, I'm gonna cry because I have no idea what's gonna go, what's happening, and everything is in German. I don't understand anything. And this guy, he came to me. He was an older gentleman, and he began to speak to me, and I was like, to me, it like because I didn't know the language, I was just like, I have no idea what you're saying. And so it was in that moment that it really dawned on me that I'm in a foreign country that I don't know the language and I don't know what I was thinking when I did this. And so he recognizes that I have no idea what he's saying. So this is a funny moment. And I just want to share it with everyone. But he says, so the next thing he says is Africa. And I looked at him and I said, what? like, why is he saying Africa to me? And then I was like, no. And then he was like, Swahili. And I was like, what? I was like, no. And then I was like, oh my God. I was like, no, America. And then I was like, English. And he was so embarrassed. It was hilarious. So that was my very first experience being there. And then my second, I figured out how to get into my house and he helped me out and we found someone that could speak English to help me. And then I finally go to, I wake up the next day. I had to sleep on the couch because it was a flat and I stayed with other international students. And so they all had their own rooms with their own keys. Again, I didn't have the keys, so I couldn't get into my room. So I slept on the couch and I got up the next day and I got everything set up, but that was a whole nother journey in itself. But my second wonderful experience was when we had our orientation for our international students. And it was interesting to be an international student. And so I get there and they're calling out different countries, that have come to, be with this cohort. And so they say, we have one student from South Africa. And everyone looks at me. Oh my God, it was hilarious. I just loved it because all I could think about was Mean Girls. So everybody stared at me and I was like, okay, no. I was like, I'm from America. So I'm from the US, people. And they're like, oh my God. So that was really funny, and I just thought that was hilarious. But being in Germany was really awesome. While I was there, I took some classes on to learn the language. And then that was really awesome because I was there. I was able to, speak it as soon as I learned it. So I had a lot of great experiences and met a lot of people from other countries all over the nation, all over the world. Even found some people that had friends on Facebook. We had mutual friends that I met in Germany, which was really weird, which goes to show you how small the world is. And that experience was really, really great. And I got to meet a lot of people. And interestingly enough, a lot of those people I still am in contact with. That was maybe 11, 12 years ago now. We've gone to each other's weddings and all kind of things. So it's been really awesome, an awesome experience. But while I was there, I had this epiphany that I wanted to go into higher education. And so what I studied in that program at Texas State was a lot of student development. I learned about a lot of identity development, especially when in regards to race and, developing self-efficacy and self-authorship. We learned about different student services across campuses, and we got to do a lot of internships as well. And that program was really awesome. It took me outside of my comfort zone. I felt like I had to uh, learn myself all over again. But I got the opportunity in that program to get into African American male literature. And I think that was kind of the spark that I had. And then as I transitioned into advising, I thought, why don't I keep this going where I'm at in my niche? And at the time, I didn't really see a lot of articles or dissertations in the area that I was doing this in. And then around that same time was the uprise of Black Lives Matter movement. So it kind of ended up being, at least the topic and my passion kind of ended up falling in a critical time for the nation. So when I went to Region 7, I was able to present this information, and it was very powerful and impactful at that time. So that was kind of my journey there, and how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, a lot of great experiences there. And it's funny how like you're talking about like how it's a small world, and then also how you were able to make these friendships and still keep them to this day. And that's really amazing. It really shows the power of like those connections that you can make with others. But I feel like I would have been you if I was looking into study abroad. I probably would have assumed the same thing, that I would have been going with a group, and then I would have freaked out if it was like, oh, I'm just me by myself traveling.
It was just me by myself. I mean, I flew by myself, and I mean, even the flying experience was interesting because several people several times, asked me if I was going to Ghana because I guess they thought I was from Ghana. And I thought that was really interesting because nobody has ever approached me and asked me if I was actually from Africa. And so that made me really want to dig deeper into cultural heritage. But that's a whole nother story. But that was a really fun experience. And no, I did not realize I was going by myself. Like, after I had already signed up and I had my little orientation to prepare to go, they were like, okay, you all are going to different countries. And I was like, what? So I thought we were all going together, and I was like, well, I guess it's too late now. I'll figure it out and I'll make it. And it was challenging. It definitely challenged me, but it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were referring to also within like NACADA Region 9 doing the presentation on, and you also wrote the NACADA Academic Advising Today article for advising African American males. And in it, I think you had quoted Harper in that in several cases, African American males encounter with racism, racial stereotypes, microaggressions, and low expectations from professors, and others that undermine their academic outcomes, sense of belonging, and willingness to seek help and utilize campus resources. And in that article, you mentioned that I think there was like 3 phases or approaches that advisors might be able to help students with or help through. And that was like, we as advisors need to be more aware and also be sensitive of these. And so you had mentioned that we need to, like, there's enforcement as performance, there's playfulness as performance, and negotiating as performance. Can you talk more about those approaches?
Yeah, and so it's been a long time since I wrote that article, and since then I did my dissertation actually on the same topic. You mentioned earlier, and so I kind of have a little bit more insight into those approaches because that was some research that I had found from other people, but I got to actually do some research on my own, and so that kind of enhanced it. But really, and some of these same topics kind of came up in my research about being able to be human and really show yourself as someone that's relatable. And the question that I always get whenever I kind of have this sensitive topic about talking about African American males is, do you have to be African American to be able to relate to the student? And my answer is no. Typically, people want to gravitate to that area that as an advisor you need to identify with the student with their race or heritage or culture. And that is not true. As long as you are able to relate, and you can be relatable and be from, completely different backgrounds. Not every student that I meet with is African American. And so I would be posed with the same question of how do I relate to this student? And I think it's just being human. A lot of times I relate to people with food because I believe that food is a universal language. I believe that if anything, we can come together on food. And so I usually start off by saying, I love to eat this, or I love to go to this restaurant or whatever. And I just found some small connection with the student, no matter what it is, if it's sports, if it's food, if it's the weather or whatever. And then we kind of go from there and begin to develop the relationship. So really the playfulness is just more of being a human and being relatable, and not always seeming like, I'm an authority figure, which you are in that situation, but, joke around, really kind of get to know them. And that's what that's all about. And then, again, just being aware of maybe some of the challenges that they may go through. And this is something that I even talk about in my research that I did for my dissertation, is understanding that there's a lot of outside factors that may shape the perception of that student as they come into an appointment. If they have negative experiences on campus, where we talked about negative stereotypes and racism and not being able to connect with their professors or even their peers, which happened to me in several cases as an undergraduate, that may shape how they come into an advisor appointment. They perceive you as maybe someone that's also not going to listen to them or going to pass them along or not be as helpful as they really need you to be in this space. So that's another opportunity. So if I'm aware of these things, then I'm able to navigate the situation a little bit better when I'm working with that student. And not, obviously you can't help how people come into your space, but you can always, shift the atmosphere, as I like to say, with their personality and with the way you allow them to feel welcome in that space. And then really just kind of negotiating, really giving them options, how is it that I can help you? What is it that you would feel comfortable? And it goes to that developmental approach, partnering with you to be successful. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is a lot of times, we can be quick to, push students to an area that we feel that is most comfortable for them, or we feel like, oh no, I feel like you'll be better in this area. And for this situation, it might be that maybe they're in a STEM major and we say, no, I think you need to be in liberal arts. And people do that more often than we realize. I, have many African-American males that come and tell me that their advisor, tried to push them into being a liberal arts major or doing something that's more of the arts when they want to be a STEM major. And so I think sometimes we may do it unconsciously, and we may not do it out of ill intent. But we just have to be aware of those things. So negotiating what is it that this student needs and how can I help them achieve their goals and not maybe the goals that I think that they should be. Because, I may see a student that comes in with low math scores. And I might say, well, I don't think you can be an engineering major because you need to start off at calculus and you're only at algebra. But if that's not what the student wants, then I need to help them get to where they need instead of trying to reroute them to something that may be a little bit easier in my eyes, which is what I go back to, lowering expectations. I have a lower expectation of what you can achieve. And the golden story that I always have for this is I had a student, I love him. I think he's going to graduate this year. So that's the end story. But he came in very low math scores. He came in as a computer science major, failed his first semester, failed several classes after that. And, my logical brain would be, maybe you need to choose another major because this is not for you. Maybe you need to do something else. But despite these challenges that he faced, he is now graduated, with a computer science degree. And so if I had, discouraged him from doing that, he would probably have, blocked me off and said, I was just like everything else that they've experienced. I didn't believe in him. I wasn't listening and I wasn't trying to support him. So I think those are some things to think about as we continue to work with African American males.
Yeah, I think the what you said about being human, and I also knew this would be a really interesting interview. A, your bio, but B, I heard you on the Swagbender podcast with I think Dr. D.T. Henry, and you covered some of what you talked about there, but you also, I think, and it's in your dissertation, the students feeling what was it? I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. And I thought that was a really lovely kind of summation. It was an understanding of where students are coming from, and how important that is to us as advisors. I think it in all our work is understanding where students are coming from, and that feeling that we do care, because it can feel to them that they're just a number, especially given the monetary concerns around universities. So I liked how you brought all that together. And one of the other things you talked about in that interview relating back to your dissertation was around, concentrating in development for advisors and talking about educating yourself and the importance of conference attendance. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that for the listeners who haven't heard that interview?
Yes. So when we think about educating ourselves, one of the things that I talked about in my dissertation is, how did the advisors that I interviewed, how did they come to the knowledge that they had or did not have? And one of the top things that they mentioned was going to conferences, and how a lot of the conferences were their first exposure to this topic, because, to them, they didn't think about it, and it's not saying that it's a bad thing, but, I never realized that there was such a need for a particular group of students. And depending on where they're coming from and where they are, they may not have heard these things. And so conference attendance was awesome because, they got to see presentations on diversity and maybe specific races and cultural groups and things like that. So it kind of gave this awakening, this awareness of, okay, maybe I need to think a little bit deeper about how I interact with these students. And now that these things have been said, I can reflect back on my experiences and say, wait, maybe I didn't facilitate this well, or maybe that's why the student did what they did, or maybe that's why they didn't come back, or maybe that's why they continue to come back. So that was a good opportunity. And then, there were other ways that people educated themselves outside of just going to conferences, because going to a conference is not always feasible for most individuals, especially working in higher ed with budget cuts and, pandemic just happening. So continued budget cuts. But some people stated reading, reading literature, staying abreast with knowledge that's being published. Some other people talked about more practical ways about being in the same space. I think sometimes it's easy to judge people based off of what we've heard, and being someone that now lives in a small town, it's so easy to have group think, because one person said this about a group of people, then we all should believe that. And you've never even met these people. My biggest example that I think about is when I was in college, and people would tell me I was the first Black friend they ever had. And to me, that was crazy. I'm from a large city. I'm originally from Houston. Very diverse. And then I come to college and people tell me I'm the first Black friend they ever had in their life. Well, at the time, I didn't know whether to be angry or, to feel sorry for this individual. But I came to the conclusion that, maybe it's not their fault that they have never been exposed to anyone, that was African American. And the only experiences that they've had is what they've been shown on TV or what somebody has told them about, this group of people. So being able to interact with people of this group is very important because then you get to form relationships and you get to make your own ideas about this group, and then also you get to break stereotypes and debunk different associations that you may have placed on this group. So those are some of the things that people stated that they use to educate themselves as well. But there were some other ones, but those are some big ones that stand out.
Yeah, and I guess related to that, there's different levels, right? You have like the student, the advisor, the professor, the institution as a whole. And I mean, it almost just seems like within the last couple of years, like you hear a lot more about like equity gaps. I mean, it's been around forever, and when you drill down on the data, you actually can see where those equity gaps are. And you have institutions that may put out their statements or say in meetings or town halls how they actively support, and they throw out all the popular buzzwords. In your opinion, like, how do you feel like institutions can begin or continue to address those issues of equity gaps or academic outcomes or sense of belonging for students?
For me, I believe that it's about being intentional, and that is a buzzword. Be intentional. We love to say that, but what I mean by be intentional is actually put the resources, to dedicate it to this group or whatever you're trying to do. So, for example, I think about, if I'm, looking at African American males, I say I want to, improve the equity gap with African American males. But then I put this task, to an office, like really, like, or I put it, I give it to one person. That person becomes, the go-to person for decreasing or increasing, equity for this group of students. And then when that person leaves, that leaves with that individual. Or, if it's just an office, but it's not an institutional effort, then it's also like, we're just spinning our wheels, and we look good from the outside. But really, the intention out there. And the example I love to give is a fruit. One time I went to the country, and there was a pear tree, and I love pears with all my heart. And so I went to go pull from this pear tree to eat it because it looked so good. But when I got ready to eat into the pear, I saw that there was a beetle that had got in the pear and ate the pear from the inside out. And so the reason why I use that analogy is because a lot of times we try to look cute on the outside, but really what's going on the inside is not what looks like the outside. And so I think sometimes we put things in place so that we can look good and make people think that we're really about equity and that we're about the student. But really, that's not the case. Sometimes it's about money. Let's just be honest. But so what I would like to say for this, I think it's about being intentional. And when I've seen these things really take place is when it's coming from the top, when it's coming from the institution. But also, do you have concentrated efforts to really dig deep and to ask those questions that need to be asked about this? So if I'm going to do something for African American males, I need maybe a whole center, and institutional efforts that are here to increase or access or give more efforts to helping these African American males be able to be successful. Just having a conversation about it is not enough, although that is a great place to start. Just saying that we're going to do this for African American males is not enough. You need the concentrated efforts. You need to be intentional. And you have to put your energy and your resources into that. And so I think that's really where we need to be. If you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. This is where the rubber meets the road.
And Terrance, I suppose you've, alongside all of the work that you have done and we've discussed, and you work with NACADA, you are also involved in the Texas Academic Advising Network. And by being involved, I mean you're the president of the Texas Academic Advising Network. Can you talk to us a little bit about the network, its relationship with NACADA and your role as president?
Yes. So I am no longer the president of TEXAAN. I have served diligently, but our TEXAAN is a state advising organization, and many states, have their own state advising organization, and so we are a member of NACADA, and we do a lot with Region 7, especially since we're the largest state in that region. So I got involved with TEXAAN because I started my work with African American males and advising in this organization. And I'm really thankful to the organization because it gave me the platform to be able to gain courage and confidence in what I was speaking, and that people actually cared about what I cared about. But the great thing about it was that it also gave me a lot of experience, because when I did the presentation the first time at TEXAAN, it was awful. Only 8 people showed up, which I'm very glad that only 8 people showed up, because I had lots of technology issues and maybe like first presenter woes. And from that, I was like, oh no, never again would this happen to me. So I improved and made drastic improvements, and then I ended up doing the same presentation at Region 7, which is where I won the best of region. But because of that experience with TEXAAN, I was able to improve later. But the good thing that I liked about it was that it gave me the opportunity to become a leader. And sometimes, and this is not being ugly or anything, but sometimes, when you have a large organization, sometimes you can feel a little lost and overwhelmed. And, how do I fit in? How do I become a leader in such a very large organization? So sometimes those smaller organizations give you that platform to be a leader. And so I started off as the NACADA liaison, which put me in a place on the board. And then I ended up becoming the president-elect. And in that opportunity as president-elect, I got to learn a lot from the president, and learn a lot about the organization and how it can really help the individuals that we had. But what I saw from my end was that a lot of people did not view the organization as robust or as something that they want to be a part of. They didn't see it at the same level as NACADA, which is understandable because, it's a state organization. So my passion as being the president of TEXAAN was to increase our profile of in the state, and to really be seen as something that is worth my time, worth my investment, and worth my opportunities to get involved. So I worked very hard with trying to reimagine who we were and what we looked like. At the time, we were more focused on just an annual conference, and we had worked on some things of trying to expand what does our organization look like and what does it mean to be a member of our organization post the conference. Because, when you go to a conference, you're really excited. You want to save the world. And then, like 2 weeks later, you're back to normal. So we wanted to keep that going. So we embedded a lot of new and revitalized a lot of new programs. So we did things like webinars. We did a mentorship program. We started a fellowship program where we are bringing in graduate students to hopefully bring them into the field. We started our journal, our own journal, to start writing a little bit more, to give people the platform and the confidence to be able to, move on to NACADA and do more in future writing. We did other things like increase our conference profile. We also did partnerships with the state coordinating board. So we did it with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to have more concentrated efforts. We did more. We have regions as well because the state is just so large. So we broke it down into region. We had region events. We did drive-ins. We did some other things. We did so many things. You know what? I don't even remember all the things we did because we did so much. But we were able to really raise the profile, and I did my own. What I called it TEXAAN tours. So I drove all over the state, baby. Y'all know that Texas is very large, so that was a lot of driving. But I drove all over the state, and I went to other smaller advising organizations, different institutions to promote the organization. And that really raised our profile. And so we increased we were able to have the largest conference that we ever had. We had it in South Padre, and we had it at 378 people that attended, which was a big record for us at the time. And then the pandemic happened, and we had all of these things planned out for the next the next year with drive-ins and all these things. And then, of course, pump your brakes, and it was very devastating for us. But me being who I am, I just Google it. So I tried to figure out what can we do to accommodate. And so we were able to host the first webinar, the first online conference, in advising period, because no one had done it. And so we were able to facilitate that. We did 2 drive-ins virtually. And we did things like had DJs, just did fun things. We used the apps, to keep people engaged and involved, and people really, really loved it. And so then it led me to being the conference co-chair again. And we hosted our first annual conference online. And that was phenomenal. We had almost 600 people in attendance. It was off the chain, We had Angela Davis. We got to have the commissioner of higher education present. We got to do our DJs as we normally do. We got to feed people via Grubhub. We got to do a lot of different things that was very out of the box. I'm an out of the box kind of guy. I always want to do something different. I always want to be innovative. And so I'm just really thankful for TEXAAN because it gave me the opportunity to be me, and to be innovative and to think outside of the box. And that's not always available, in certain spaces that you're in because, we have a way that we do it and this is how we always do it. But I was able to challenge people and even bring people higher. And so I really appreciate that experience.
There's been multiple meetings I've been in where someone has said, well, what does TEXAAN do? And so I think there's definitely that positive impact that has spread globally, and which I think is perfect because this is going to be posted during the Global Advising Week for NACADA. And I think a lot of what you've talked about, I think you've inspired people to maybe get more involved within their local organization or within NACADA. And I think a lot of things you mentioned about Grubhub and things at the conferences, people who are planning future conferences are probably like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let me write that down.
Yes, write it down, baby. That was a hit. People love the Grubhub. And it was awesome, to be able to supply things, and people were very impressed because they didn't expect it. Of course, one of my favorite things to do when I go to a conference is eat. So I did not want to have a conference where there was no food present that I didn't have to pay for. So with that being said, I got together with my team and we were just like, hey, how can we do, certain things? We still gave out gifts, and, now that everybody went to electronic gift cards, that was awesome. So we did that. We played a lot of games. We played this thing called Meme Throwdown where we presented a topic and you had to find a meme that represented the topic. And then people got to vote on it. It was hilarious. And so it just was awesome. Again, I enjoy being there, and being virtual, allowed us to do things that we would not have ever been able to do. We would not have been able to have Angela Davis had we not done it virtually. And I think for TEXAAN, having someone like Angela Davis was a first for us, not because of her profile, but because of the stance on social justice. And what I found is that sometimes we like to shy away from those things in advising because we like to just kind of stay neutral to things. And, if people have presentations or whatnot, we encourage those. But as an organization, what does that look like to support social justice? And so that was challenging, because not everybody agreed. Not everyone was okay with us taking a social justice stance, but at the end of the day, we serve students, and our students are very diverse, and they come from very different backgrounds, and we have to be prepared to serve these students. And so, if that means that people got upset, then that's good, because maybe it was an opportunity to challenge people in their current beliefs and values. And so that was a great opportunity for us, and the organization is going to continue to move forward in that direction. But these were like just groundbreaking moments for us. And, if anybody wants to build their organizations, I would encourage them, because, I've always been one, take care of home. And so for me, TEXAAN was home. And I wanted to build us, because I knew that people don't always have the opportunities to be involved in the Nakata as much as they would like, because of the different circumstances and situations. So having TEXAAN was a way for people to connect locally and even address a lot of the concerns that we have in Texas. And the conference came. Oh, I was so thankful. I was just praying. I was like, oh my God, because it came right after the snowstorm, which people have coined Snowvid. I don't know where they came from, but they've termed it Snowvid. And I was thankful that came right before, because I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be awful. But I think it was good and it was refreshing. And, we have a bubbly personality in the organization. We love to be a little bit casual and kind of just make people feel happy. And so people felt happy. I mean, we were still, even the last day, we still had over 300 people on the call, which we had on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday, people not trying to do much. So that was really encouraging to see.
I think what also strikes me in terms of a lot of what you've said is, I know that you're going to have had a conference proposal accepted for don't cancel your event, best practices for virtual event planning. I think we may have just gotten a sneak peek, and I think listeners will definitely now want to attend, given what you've just outlined. Now, Terrance, it would be remiss of us to let you go, given that it is the Global Advising Week special episode, given that you are a leader in, the advising field. One of the other guests on this episode is Dr. Charlie Nutt, the Executive Director of NACADA. This will be, I suppose, his last Global Advising Week as Executive Director, as Charlie moves into his retirement. Just reflecting on your own interactions with Charlie, any good Charlie Nutt stories, any inspirational stories that you got from him, or memories of him presenting?
So I think I did meet him in person once, but I was always a little bit too shy to want to go up to him. And not that he was an intimidating person, but I just, he was like, oh my God, this is Charlie Nutt, so I just never went up to him. But he always was very joyful, and I really appreciated him. He came to Region 7 a few times that I was in attendance, and I just enjoy his passion. And for me, people like Charlie, they are people that inspire me to be who I am. And I take a little bit from, people, and people usually say like, oh my God, you're such a dynamic speaker and, presenter. And I believe that when you put your whole self into something, people receive the passion, they feed off of that passion. And so they connect with you. And that was something that I took from Charlie, as I'm like watching him and listening to him and listening to his passion, I'm thinking to myself, this is the kind of speaker I want to be. Obviously I want to be myself and be who I am, but these are things that I want to glean from him as a speaker. And so I'm really happy for him, being in retirement, and I hope that he actually goes into retirement, because people say they retired and they still doing stuff, but just really enjoy just life. He's really done the work, and he's really laid foundations, that are going to be here for generations to come. And so I want to be just like him when I grew up. I want to lay foundations for generations, and generations has been something that I have been taking hold of a lot more lately. Legacy, what am I leaving for others? Not just for the next 10 years, but the next 20 years, the next 30 years. And it really changes your perspective of how you behave and the things that you do, and what you care about. And so, I'm really thankful to Charlie. So go Charlie for retiring. We really appreciate you. I appreciate you. And I thank you for your inspiration to me as I continue to try to inspire others.
And you talk about Charlie's passion, but I think there's your passion as well. And I think a lot of listeners, like even just listening, talking to you right now, kind of getting inspired, so thank you so much. And we appreciate you being on the podcast. And I feel like we got a lot more to talk about, and there'll be a part 2 at some point down the road.
Yes.
So if any listeners have any questions or they want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yes, you can email me at tjm80@txstate, that's spelled out state.edu. Definitely email me. I'll email you back. I'm very responsive. I usually respond within 24 hours, but I'm very quick. I love to respond because I don't like to make people wait. And so reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. And I'm, again, just trying to continue to do things in my passion. I'm doing a webinar next week on advising African-American males. So I'm continuing to do these things. And like I said, like you said in my bio, I am working on publication. So you will see this in the College Journal. And I'm just speaking it because I believe in being positive and speaking into existence. So you will see my article very soon on this. And so get ready for some good nuggets on some good advising strategies for working with African-American men. So be on the lookout for that.
Absolutely. I've always grown up, speak it, believe it.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.